Thank you all for coming. We're going to be talking about ESAs. Before I get to some of the financial things we want to talk about, let me just say a word about the function of ESAs. We have great public schools in Arizona, and 90% of my efforts and the efforts of our department go toward helping our public schools improve their academic results. But some students' needs are not being met by the local public school. And when that happens, the parents should have the right to find a school that will meet their child's needs, which is something that rich people have always had, and we think people at all economic levels should have. And we have families where there are 3 kids, and 2 of them are doing fine in public school, but one has some needs that aren't being met, and the parents have an ESA for that one. So the ESA program is not contradictory to public schools. Public schools are our main focus, but the ESAs are there to provide choice that rich people have always had for people at all economic levels if the needs of their child are not being met. And it's a program that is very popular among its participants. They feel like their child's needs are being met for the first time, and it's an important part in the whole mosaic of education that we present to our children. I want to talk about abolishing some myths with facts, and my poster kind of illustrates that. The myth is that ESAs are causing the state to go bankrupt because they're so expensive, and that ESAs are responsible for the budget deficit. That is a myth which is completely contrary to fact. The reason that some people have miscalculated this is that they fail to account for the fact that a student that's in an ESA, if they weren't there, they'd be in a public school. The cost of to the state of that student being in the public school is over $13,000 per student. In ESAs, we give $7,200 per student. But what's happened is that people have calculated the gross cost without the alternate savings, and when you apply the alternate savings, the ESAs are not costing the state. In fact, all kinds of education, public schools and ESAs, are experiencing a $28 million surplus as projected through the end of the year. We are showing that far from causing the budget deficit, which is caused by other things, nothing in education is causing the budget deficit, because all kinds of education are costing $28 million as of the end of this fiscal year less than we're actually budgeted for. And that's what our board is illustrating. It's a myth that the ESAs are causing bankruptcy for the state, and the fact is that they're not part in any way of the budget deficit. That's caused by other things. We handed out the quarterly report that we give to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, and in our desire to keep you up to date, this is a report that was just filed this morning, and you now have it. And if you look at the yellow highlighted portion, you'll see $28,539,000 of surplus. That is, that all forms of education are costing the state $20,539,000 less than we're budgeted for. Some people talk about an estimate that ESAs would cost $900,000. That $900,000 was calculated according to a formula in the legislation that didn't allow for the offset, and that also included the cost of students entering in July, which is after the fiscal year, and their cost for the rest of the next fiscal year. It was a complicated formula, but it doesn't convey the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is, as the numbers show that I've distributed to you, that's in our quarterly report to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, that ESAs are not contributing in any way to the budget deficit, and that we have a surplus of $28,539,000 for all forms of education, including ESAs. We have a trend that is very favorable because when ESA started, a lot of people that joined had the kids already in private schools. The trend has been away from that, and we can now tell you that 59% of the students that are joining ESAs are coming either from public schools or for kindergarten if they are special ed students who would otherwise be in public schools and costing the state a lot, as special ed takes more than the normal amount of expense. The second myth that I wanted to demolish is that my administration is allowing excessive expenditures. Now, I have some examples. A lot of times that I'm accused of that, including from the people from SOS that are here with us. They talk about excess expenditures that were made by the prior administration, and I've cracked down on those. And in fact, because I cracked down, I want every expenditure to be valid educational expenditure and consistent with the legislation. I had demonstrations against me in the call to the public in state board meetings, meeting after meeting, 40 or 50 people taking turns attacking me because they preferred the previous administration's lax attitude. But I will not allow any abuse to occur to the system. I have ignored advice from a number of people, including an article in National Review magazine that suggested that we shouldn't check every request. We should do it on a spot basis, the way they do with the IRS, so that we could process it faster. And I've rejected that. I've insisted that we check every single request. And as a result of that, in the first quarter alone, we rejected 12,200 requests. We've sent 7 collection cases to the State Board of Education and the Attorney General, and 7 account holders encompassing 10 ESA accounts directly to the Attorney General for probable fraud. I am determined, I'm the former Attorney General, I'm determined that every single expenditure will be a valid educational expense and will be in conformity with the legislation, and people preferring the old lax system have been protesting against me, but I'm not going to give in to that. And in addition, we've suspended nearly 2,200 ESA accounts because our research showed that they were already enrolled in the public schools. That saves the state $20 million. ESA has 72,000 students. Our public schools have 1.2 million students. So ESAs are not a threat to the public schools. What they do is fill a need in the mosaic of education. As I mentioned earlier, where families might be doing fine with the public schools with some of their kids, but one kid needs something different, and that need should be met. I have teachers in my department who are for ESAs because when they were public school teachers, they saw students whose needs were not being met. And they wanted to tell the parents that they should go to a charter school, but they were afraid they would be retaliated against by their administration or blackballed by other teachers. And so they're happy now that the parents are learning that they have choices, and if a student's needs are not being met, that student's needs should be met. That is the value of ESAs. Our goal is the needs of every student should be met. Primarily, it's done in the public schools, and we devote, as I said, 90% of our efforts to helping the public schools get better academic results. But where choice is needed, ESAs provide that choice, along with charter schools providing that choice, and that is a benefit for our students. It's time for the constant attacks on ESA by some people to stop. Thank you, and I'll turn it over now to the President of the Senate.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here this morning. I just want to acknowledge some of the legislators that are here. Thank you for being here, Superintendent Horne, and calling for this press conference. We have Senator Champ here. We have Senator Bullock. We have the whip, Senator Kerr here. We have Senator Farnsworth. and we have Representative Cook, and we have Jenny Clark up here with us this morning. I think the superintendent was extremely comprehensive in what he said, but I want to focus on two things that I think the media has missed, or I'd say most of the media. Some of the media is getting it right, and so that's good, but the key thing here is this. It is an absolute myth to say that ESAs cost more money or are costing the taxpayer more money than public schools. Here are the facts. Ma'am, I sure hope you guys are not teaching our students to be uncivil and disrespectful like you're being. Please show some civility. Please show some civility. You're being completely uncivil. Here's the facts. The facts are these. For a public education, it's $13,000. For an ESA, it's $7,000. Simple math, folks. $13,000 is more than $7,000. The false narrative comes from where the cost is coming from. The $7,000 is a cost to the general fund, whereas the $13,000 is from all sources. But the bottom line is this: the taxpayer saves money with ESAs. But that's not even the most important thing here. The Republican legislature supports parental choice. I don't use ESAs. My kids go to public schools. But you know what? The Republican legislature believes that parents can decide what's best for their kids. That's what we're doing. We're making sure parents have a choice. I don't understand why these folks feel so threatened by 70,000 kids and parents deciding what they want to do for their kids' education. Why do they feel so threatened? The majority of kids go to their schools. And it's no different than a kid choosing a different school or a kid choosing a charter school. And this argument that it costs more is just not honest. And for people that are teaching math, I think they can do the math and know that that's just not the case. So as Republicans and as a Republican-led legislature, we are going to protect parental choice. We're going to make sure parents have options. We have dramatically increased K-12 funding. Since I have been in the legislature, it has doubled. And under Doug Ducey said we are going to dramatically increase K-12 education, and he did. And I can tell you, if you look at all the states in the nation, you'd be very hard-pressed to find a state who accelerated their K-12 and increased their K-12 education at the rate that we did. So, with that, do we have anybody that wants to make any other comments? Okay, yes, Jenny, if you want to come up.
Thank you so much. Well, my name is Jenny Clark. I was born and raised in Arizona. I graduated from Arizona Public Schools. I have 5 children, and 4 of my children have a diagnosed special need evaluated through the public school system. So my children qualify for the Empowerment Scholarship, 4 of them, in the special needs category. I think most parents out there, like myself as a public school graduate, you never imagine that your child is going to need something other than the public school that you went to and that worked for you. But sometimes that's not the case. You can't control whether or not your child might have a learning disability or a special need or a diagnosis. 3 of my children have diagnosed dyslexia, and unfortunately at the time our local public school system did not have the proper services that they needed, and we were told about an empowerment scholarship. We were actually told about an empowerment scholarship from Shauna Bullock, and it changed our families' lives. Now there are over 70,000 families who the traditional public school environment might not have been working for them. Now I think we're approaching 20,000 of those families are students with disabilities, and the Empowerment Scholarship is a lifeline for those students. And I want to make something really clear here. These folks that are against school choice and parent empowerment, they're not just against the ESA as a whole. They're essentially telling families, telling special needs families in Arizona that they know what's best for our kids, and that the best environment for those special needs kids, whether your child is struggling with ADHD or dyslexia or autism, is the public school environment. And so special needs families in Arizona are very concerned, they're very distraught about the calls for the repeal of the entire ESA program, which is what is before us today. So I just want to make that really clear to the media, because I feel like the special needs families across the state that are utilizing the ESA, whose children are thriving, who are in all sorts of different socioeconomic status and political parties, their children need the Empowerment Scholarship, and they're so grateful for it. And many of them have been utilizing the ESA for over 10 years very successfully. So that's what's at stake here. They're calling for the repeal of the whole program, including for students with disabilities. And that should be concerning, not just for those families, but to every Arizonan, that we would put more trauma on students with disabilities by forcing them back into an environment that doesn't work for them. Thank you.
Senate President Petersen.
Yeah, let's, the Senator Farnes wants to make a quick comment, and then we'll open it up for questions. Did you want to say something, Senator Shea? Okay.
Thank you. I came to the legislature the first time in 1994, and what we have in Arizona today was a dream for us back then when we first started talking about school choice. I have 7 children and 32 grandchildren, and each of those grandchildren have different needs. I have a granddaughter who is severely autistic. I have some of my grandchildren who are very brilliant. Some of them are in public schools, some are in charter schools, and some are being homeschooled. And I am very grateful that my 7 children have the freedom here in Arizona to choose what is best for each individual child and their individual needs. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for a few questions.
Yeah, Senate President.
Yes, sir.
Jenny made a good point about how ESAs do benefit families with special needs.
That's right.
I keep hearing this comparison that you and your colleagues are making, and you were talking about a $7,000 range, and that doesn't include special needs funding, and then you're including a $13,000, $14,000 range that does. Why are you using this false equivalence?
Still cheaper.
If you really believe in the program, why are you and your colleagues just misrepresenting what's the truth?
What are you saying the false equivalent is? What's the false equivalent?
The average ESA with special needs is upwards of close to $10,000.
Okay. And what does it cost to do a special needs in a school?
That's right.
Have you looked to see what the average state funding is for special needs in schools?
So I'll let the superintendent address that.
No, but with all due respect, these are really important
Jenny.
numbers.
Yeah, I can actually jump right in, because I know exactly how this works as a parent with students with disabilities.
This is on your
Yeah.
website.
Sure.
And I've
So
heard
here, I'll go ahead and explain how it works. So when you are in the
working
public school system,
It doesn't sound like you're with 12 News. It sounds like you're pushing an agenda. Are you gonna be biased?
This
Are
is
you
one of the most basic
are you gonna let us
copies.
talk? Are you gonna let us answer your question?
I can
We got
help.
an answer right here.
I can help.
I
I can help. Yeah, I can help answer that. And this is something that unfortunately students with disabilities and families of students with disabilities are very, very familiar with. So when you're in a traditional school environment, your child qualifies probably for a 504 plan or an IEP. And all these different funds and services are sent to that school for your child. When you choose to accept an empowerment scholarship, you're receiving only 90% and only of the state portion. So the public school system receives significantly more money for a student with a disability than when parents leave to an ESA and they have that student with a disability. There are 13 qualified federal disability categories, and so the funding that Arizona sets is different based on whatever the child's disability. So there's no way that you can argue that the funding is not less, even for a student with a disability, when a child goes on to an empowerment scholarship. When that child is in the public school system, the public school receives significantly more money. So in every case, there is a savings, even for a student with disability, when they leave and choose an ESA.
Did that answer your question?
Well, I have a direct here.
Go ahead.
I'll give you a direct answer to your question. Okay, the $7,200 is what the legislature specified per student, but obviously ESA, the special needs kits cost more. The average is $9,800, including special needs. That's still less than $13,000.
But the $13,000 is also including special needs. This is the.
I know, but
it's just false.
Wait a second. Excuse me.
Don't those numbers matter when
I
you're
just
trying to make your case?
I just gave you the numbers. The numbers are public school 13,000, ESA including special ed cost, average per student 9,800. It's still less.
Are you saying 13,000 cost to the state?
To the public schools.
To the taxpayers.
Okay, when you're first, this is why I'm getting at this, because these words matter. When you gave your speech from the beginning, you said it is a $13,000 cost to the state, and it's not. $2,700 or federal funds immediately.
It's a cost to the taxpayers.
The taxpayer.
And
I think I think the president said that it's a cost to the taxpayers. Now I'd like you to stop making your own speech because other people have actual questions. Yes.
Yeah.
No,
So
and maybe I'm confused by this, but when you do the math and you take out the ESA money for the state budget, you divide it by the roughly 72,000 students enrolled, you're looking at about $10,000 per student, just by my rough math here. But when you divide all of the rest of the Department of Education funding by the 1.2 million students, you actually get a number that's less than that.
yeah. So you're looking at. So I'll address that.
About state budget, the impact
Right.
on the state budget is
Correct.
more for an
We're
ESA.
talking about the state general fund, but the taxpayer also pays property taxes, and there's also a large part of that is property tax funding. So from all sources, that's why we said from all sources, the taxpayer saves money. The taxpayer saves money.
I understand that, but what we're talking about is a general fund budget
Yeah, we are.
shortfall. And in all, an ESA
But
student is
the
costing...
general fund does not have a shortfall because of ESAs.
Right.
We calculate when they estimated the expenses for this year. The estimated expenses for K-12 so far this year have been 28 million less than what they projected. Okay? So as far as expenses, a budget is simple. There's income and there's expenses. The expenses were in line. What they projected for expenses for K-12 were in line. In fact, we have a surplus. Now when it comes to revenues, they estimated the revenues and their revenue number was short. And that is why there's a deficit, because the revenue numbers were not, the economist included the flat tax, and the economist included the ESAs, and the economists included everything, but their projections were off. And let me tell you something, we put a budget on the governor's desk, our first budget. And if the governor would have signed that budget, right now we would be sitting with a $500 million surplus. We put a budget on the governor's desk, and if she would have signed that budget, you guys can have your press conference. You guys are welcome to have your own press conference. We won't come to your press conference and heckle you and say and be rude and disrespectful when you have your press conference, okay?
Shameful.
It's truly embarrassing for you. So the fact is this, there were 3 budget ideas. The governor had a very high spending budget. We had a very lean budget. She vetoed the lean budget. We would have had a $500 million surplus had she not vetoed the lean budget. We compromised and we sat down and we came up with, we balanced to exactly what the economists gave us for revenues and projections, spending projections. That's what we balanced off of. The economists were not right on the revenue projections. That's why there's a shortfall. The ESAs, K-12 is $28 million less than what we had. Any other questions?
You acknowledge, at least, President, you acknowledge that every new ESA will make it more difficult to balance the budget, with the exception of charter.
No, no, sir.
That
Sir,
is the
sir, please learn how budgets work.
Given the general
Sir,
budget.
sir, please learn how budgets work. No, because we're going to balance off of that. Every time we have somebody, we're going to that will be an expense, and then we will balance our next budget off of that. So
You agree then that every new ESA, except for charter students, makes it more difficult to balance the budget?
that's like saying if we had 10,000 kids move here for K-12 public schools, it would be harder to balance our budget. That's your logic. Do we have any people who understand budgets that want to ask
Just
a
a
question?
second. Hold on. Hold
Yes,
a second.
right here. You're right here.
Okay, yeah, President,
Yeah.
It's a very simple question. The JLBC noted that ESAs do play a role in the deficit. What do you say to these folks? These are the tax experts.
No, listen.
They're not the
Everything you spend plays a role in the budget. Here's what I'm saying. The spend matched. What didn't match was their estimates on the income revenue. That's what did not match, and we balanced off of that number. So next year, so for this budget right now, they have an estimate for how many people will be in ESAs, how many people will be in K-12, how many people will be in the prisons, how many people will be on Medicaid. Okay, they're going to project how much all of those things are going to cost, and we are going to balance our budget based off of those projections. And when it came to K-12, they were 28 million. We're 28 million below what they projected. So that's not it. That's not it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, talking about this, obviously the revenue was wrong, right? The
Right.
incoming revenue
Yeah.
was wrong. But all in all, to accommodate ESAs, the overall state educational budget is billion more than it was a couple of years ago
No.
to accommodate ESAs in part.
No, that's completely wrong.
No, that's not right.
Let me have a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's completely wrong. Because you're not counting the fact that if the student was in an ESA, he'd be in a public school. And your math was wrong because you chose a number that did not account for the fact that the number of dollars was a projection to the end of the year, and the number of the students used was a current number of students. If you take the average public school cost and the average ESA cost, the average public school cost is $10,900 and the average ESA cost is $9,900. So every additional ESA student that would have been in a public school is $1,000 less than what the cost would be in the public school.
So, sir, let me ask this question a different way. Are you familiar with what your total budget request was for, say, FY 2023 and how that compares to 2025?
I can get the number for you. I don't have it on the top
But
of my
it
head.
is significantly higher, correct?
Well, you have more students. Of course, it grows every year.
So, here-
Let me see if anybody else has a question.
Hold on. Let me just say something. Let me just say something real quick,
Yeah,
Tom, if you
yeah.
don't mind. Are you going to let us talk? Are you going to let us talk? You guys can talk to the reporters after we're done, okay? Had the economists gotten the income projections correct, right now we'd be balanced. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. So this cycle, they're going to project again, but it wasn't K-12. We are 28 million to the positive in K-12. ESAs are part of the K-12. That's the fact. That's the fact.
Okay, we have a question
Yes,
from we had a question
Bram.
from the Arizona Republic.
Or Mary Jo, go ahead.
2 points. One, to
Yeah.
clarify, so are you saying that no matter how large the ESA program may grow, the legislature will budget for that and cover that cost?
Of course. We do the same. It's educate, medicate, incarcerate. Those are your three biggest budget expenses.
Litigate.
And yeah, okay. Yeah, fortunately that one's still a small sliver, okay? All of those things, that's what are we saying we don't want to educate our children, folks? You guys have like a split message if you're saying we need to increase education funding, but we're not okay increasing education funding. There's some real cognitive dissonance there, folks.
I understand what you're saying there, but what if the ESA program grows to 500,000 students? At what point would there be a point where it's a budget break?
That's what parents.
Mary Jo, right now, we are in the positive with K-12. Right now, we're in the positive with K-12. I could do a million what ifs. Okay, we can do a middle. Let's deal with the real what ifs when the real what ifs are here.
And secondly, on the cost of the taxpayer,
Mary Jo, can I give you a direct answer on that? No matter how much ESA grows, The cost at ESA is the numbers I just gave, $9,800, and the cost for public schools $10,900. So no matter how much it grows, it does not add to the budget.
Mary Jo, if we increase K-12 budget, our K-12 budget by 25%, should we do that? How much should we increase K-12 by?
Well, that's sort of my question to you.
Okay, see, we should. You want us to increase K-12, right? But unless it's for vouchers, you don't. Unless it's for ESA parents, you don't want to. Okay, let's get some real questions here, Bram.
How much money was allocated in the 24 budget for ESAs?
The number for ESA budget? I don't have it in front of me.
624 million.
Okay.
This document says 740 million was allocated.
Okay.
A budget, a document similar to this that Tom Horne's office issued back in October said 900 million was allocated.
Okay.
So,
Bram, how much was it allocated for K-12? No, you are trying to, Bram. It is so obvious what you're doing right now.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it is so obvious. Bram, let me talk and then I'll let you talk. Let you talk. Okay, go ahead.
And then you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, I'll say the truth.
I can answer this question.
24
Yeah.
allocated.
Yeah,
This says the projection is 732.
right.
That's $100 million
Right.
miss.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah, Bram.
is that money coming from?
Yeah, Bram. Okay. So K-12, the K-12 ESAs is within the K-12 budget. The ESA number was higher than projection, but the total K-12 budget number was lower than the projection, which you know. But Bram, you don't like ESAs. You don't like.
know what
It's obvious. All you got to do is read one of your articles, Bram. Bram, you don't like ESA. Bram, you don't like ESAs, Bram. That's the fact.
Okay,
Can we get a question from a non-biased reporter? This crowd right here.
If I could just give.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and make your final comment.
Yeah.
You're going to caucus.
Yeah, I want to answer that directly. I explained in what I said in the beginning. The $900,000 included the number of
900 million.
900 million. Sorry, yeah, that was Freudian. The 900 million included the number of students projected for July, which is after the fiscal year, extended through the end of the next fiscal year. I don't know why that was part of the formula.
Okay.
It doesn't accurately. Just a second. Oh yeah, thanks. It doesn't accurately reflect the reality, but that was the formula we were given, and that's where the 900,000 came from. But the actual number is less than was projected.
Why doesn't this allocation in your document match up with what was actually allocated?
I just told you why.
No.
Yes, I did. I told you because.
2024 allocation, which would have been last June, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. This says 740 million.
Yeah.
And yet the actual number is 625.
I just explained it to you. I just explained it to you that number is not an.
How did the allocation?
That number last June was this is an accurate projection. The number last June was a result of a formula that we got from the legislature that did not accurately project it. Anybody else have a question?
A different topic.
You've had, all right, go ahead.
Okay. Back in October, when I talked to you about ESA spending and some of the expenditures that families were making, and talked about the reaction to that, you said that you were willing to compromise with Democrats to some degree on some of these solutions to reform the program. Where are you willing to compromise today?
That's not up to me. That's up to the legislature. If the legislature decides to make changes, I will dutifully follow them as an administrator. But it's not up to me to compromise. It's up to the legislature to compromise.
Well,
Thank you all very much.
Tom, for those
You've had
families
plenty of time.
concerned About their district schools being impacted next year. What's your message to lawmakers? Because we do have a deficit. What's your message to lawmakers about district public school funding today?
I have plenty of. Well, I support the plan of the Republican majority to increase teacher salaries by 7%. I think that's very important.
Does that include no cuts in any way to district public schools and charters?
That's my anticipation, yeah.
So is that your request to the legislature? They not cut any programs?
I'm supporting the Republican plan that did not include any cuts that I know about. If they come up later, I'd have to deal with that. But what I have right now is a Republican plan. I participated in the press conference that we held out here where we said we wanted to increase teacher salaries by 7%, and I'm passionately for that because our surrounding states pay teachers more. We lose good teachers to our surrounding states, and we can't afford to do that anymore. We've got to get our teacher salaries up. Thank you all very much.
Top 1, 2, 3 questions, sir.
Yeah.
Which of the plans or proposals do you support? Governor, legislature, or Kimberly?
I support whatever it comes into law because my job as an administrator is to apply the law. So if the legislature gets together with the governor and they come up with a plan, I will dutifully follow it. Thanks.